Pharmacy is not a business to get into because you want to be rich. You'll be very disappointed. You're not going to be poor.
You'll be comfortable.
You'll be comfortable. I remember a GP came to me recently and said that he wanted to invest in a pharmacy. And I said to him, look, you need to be sure of what you're going into. Because pharmacy is not a business that you're going to put your money in and you expect a return immediately, or you put your money in and you take your eyes off it. You have to have boots on the ground to run the business.
Welcome back to Behind the Counter Pharmacy and Beyond. I'm your host, Solomon Abode. In the last few episodes, we've traveled through the early years of pharmacy ownership. We've talked about the excitement of buying your first pharmacy, to the reality check that comes with running two pharmacies or running a pharmacy after 2 years, to the turning point that hits around year 5. But today is different. Today, we're entering a different league. And this is episode 4, part 1 of our special series, Is Pharmacy Still a Good Business? And we're stepping into the world of someone who has not only survived for over a decade, but has grown, adapted, reinvented, and carved out a space in an industry that has changed dramatically. Long-term contractors have a very distinct perspective. They've seen peak funding and painful cuts. They've built teams and rebuilt them. They've faced burnout and breakthrough moments. They understand the business in a way that, quite frankly, only time can teach. And today, we get to learn from one of them. Our guest has been running a pharmacy for over a decade, navigating policy changes, workforce shortages, rising costs, and consistent pressures while still finding a way to grow and stay relevant. This is going to be a conversation full of honesty, wisdom, and real-world insights. And if you're thinking about owning a pharmacy or you're already in that journey, this episode could save you years of heartache. Let's get into it. Welcome to the show, Temi. I'm really excited to have you here. For the listeners that don't know you, can you just introduce yourself and give yourself a short introduction?
Hi, listeners. My name is Temi. I'm the Superintendent Pharmacist of a growing chain of pharmacies.
Okay. Thank you, Temi. So we're going to get straight into it. And our listeners, like I said, the questions that we've gone through, and we need to sort of get into this space to pick your brains and see how you find pharmacy and your own experience. So my first question for you, Temi, is, in your opinion, based on your experience, what's kept your pharmacy growing for over a decade? Now, to qualify that question, a decade in pharmacy isn't just 10 years. And I think every contractor knows that. It's almost like 20 in an industry because things have changed so much. So what has really kept you going, and what habits and what decisions allow anybody to stay relevant and alive in this climate?
Thank you very much, Solomon. You know, this is an interesting question. A few years ago, we sat down with my team and we looked at what has really helped our pharmacy to get us to where we have got to. I'm talking about, I think it was about 5 years ago that we had this meeting. And 4 key things actually came out, as what has really helped us to get us to where we got to at that point. Because at that point, we thought we need to make this a policy document. We need to write this down so that whoever is joining the company will understand the culture and the mindset that has got us to where we have got to at that time. And we believe that those things that has really helped us to grow to that point are the things that we need to pay attention to that will help us into the future. And we identified 4 key points. The first thing is the customer experience. When we started out about 14, 15 years ago, we had about, I think, 4 or 5 pharmacies in less than 1 mile radius where we started. By the way, we started from 0 items. We started as a 100-hour pharmacy from 0 items, and, we were able to grow that to, over 25,000 items today. So one of the things that we were mindful of was the customer experience when the customer walk into our pharmacy. What is the kind of service that we're giving to them? Customers don't, if you understand pharmacy very well, they don't ask for too much. Number one thing they always ask for is that they be seen to promptly. Secondly, They don't like to have too much owings. They just want to get the medications as prescribed by the doctors. They want to get it there and then. It might sound so simple, but we found out that making sure customers are served promptly and ensuring that all their medications, we are able to get them for them when they are in the store and there are not too many owings. And in fact, research has shown that one of the highest two reasons why people leave a pharmacy, number one is waiting time. Number two is owings, when they are being owed, medications that have been prescribed. So we make it a point of duty that when customers come into our store, we ensure they're served promptly and we ensure that our stock, is up to date. So number one was the customer experience. Number two is teamwork, because pharmacy is a team game. You can't run it alone. Building strong, efficient teams that are passionate about the work, that will not be deterred by challenges, has really helped us, to grow to the stage that we are today. And we also identified stock management, ensuring that your stock levels are right. These days, with technology, you've got the data in front of you. You know you're going to use 100 Fosters in a month. Why do you keep just 2 Fosters? And then each time anybody comes for Foster, you're owing them. You're going to use 100 Fosters in a month. Get that in beginning of the month. So we do a bulk order at the beginning of the month to ensure that majority of the items we need in the month are already in the pharmacy. And it also makes the job, efficient. And we also identified professionalism. In everything we do, we have to be professional. We believe that these 4 points have really helped us to grow to, the pharmacy and the organization that we have today.
Thank you very much for that, Temi. I mean, I'm listening to you there. And these 4 pillars, you've got customer experience, teamwork, stock management, and professionalism. Very key, but I'm going to sort of just tug away at a few of them. The customer experience, you talked about the owings and the waiting times. Waiting times, I understand that, but as someone who's been in the pharmacy business as well and speaking to a lot of contractors and, having a lot of our listeners, the customer, they spend the stock levels, right, that you referred to, and you talked about in your stock management as well. Some people will listen to you there and think, yeah, but you're locking up cash, right? That's the first point. And secondly, how have you managed and navigated the issues around over tariff and out of stocks? Are you still able to get the stock?
It's a challenging, situation for pharmacies. We're faced with the same challenges that other contractors or other businesses are faced with in terms of, over tariff items and out of stock and all. The way we go about managing our stock also helps to mitigate against some of these things that you've talked about. So, for example, if at the beginning of the month, you've already ordered items that you need for the whole of the month, if mid-month that item goes out of stock, you still have some residual stock to keep you going, at least till the end of the month. And we get information about items that are going short in the market and all of that. And some of the things that we do as well is to ensure that we get as much of those items in as soon as possible. We face the challenges like every other person, but you will agree with me that it cannot be all of the items that are out of stock. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any medications to dispense. For example, a propranolol 80 milligrams modified release that has been out of stock for some time now. We wouldn't just send the customer away. We will ensure that we find an alternative that they can use. And even before they come into the branch, communicate that to the doctor and got them that alternative in place. We got quite, a few branches, and we know that it's easier to get such done with the doctors in some areas compared to others. But in the areas that it is easy to do, we got a good relationship with the doctors, and the doctors are, helpful, I would say, and with this sort of request, get that item, get the alternative in place even before the customer arrives. And when they arrive, we explain to them that this is what has happened. This item is out of stock. We've been able to get you this alternative from the doctor. And in some cases, if they come early to pick up the medication and we haven't had time to do that, we explain what alternatives that can be can be used in place of the out of stock items. So, I mean, just going the extra mile for the patient would matter a lot rather than just telling the patient, this item is out of stock and, there is nothing I can
There's
do.
nothing I can do. Yeah, you mentioned the data that we've all got access to nowadays, and that is correct. So in terms of your buying, then do you do your buying centrally, or is that up to each branch to decide the quantity that they want based on the data?
When we started some years ago, I think we both had this discussion with you, Solomon, and we came about this idea of some of our suppliers bidding, sending. So we have a bid that goes out to some suppliers, especially for our fast moving generics. So every month, think about 4 of them would send in their tender of their best prices. And we have this software that gives us the supplier with the best price. I know there are other ways that other contractors do this, but this is the way we do it. It's work for us, and they say if it's not broken.
Yeah.
So we send the items out, the tender for the items, give us their best prices. We go with the cheapest supplier, and then we send those out to all the branches. The branches have the independence of stocking what they need because the data is in the front of the store manager. You know how many amoxicillin capsules you're going to use in a month. So we centrally give them the company to buy from, and they decide what quantity to stock for the month.
So the negotiation is done centrally.
Negotiation from centrally,
and
yeah.
then the branches decides based on the usage what they want to keep.
Exactly.
And in terms of the teamwork then, which is another pillar that you've mentioned, you've said you sort of work hard on motivating your team to do the right things. How do you motivate your team, and has that changed over time?
So one of the ways that we believe that our teams are being motivated is that we have a good reward system in the organization. So we have this key performance indicators that all the branches are aware of, and every month they have to send in their what they've achieved of the KPIs to the admin staffs, and the KPIs are then linked to their bonuses. We have a generous bonus scheme that is linked to the KPIs. So the more you do, the more you get.
So the sort of the bonus scheme is mainly part of the motivation then. And
Yeah.
in terms of these 4 pillars, because I know a lot of people that have values and pillars and sort of, ethos within their organization. But one of the things I think a lot of people struggle to do is how do you instill that within the team? So you mentioned earlier on about when you get new starters starting, you let them understand or make them understand that this is the pharmacy, the organization you're working for, and these are the values of the organization. Do you just do that via training, or is it more a case of everybody's living it on a daily basis and therefore the new starters see that?
Thank you for that question, Solomon. A few years ago, we had a situation in a branch, right, where the pharmacist in that branch eventually left the organization. And by the time this pharmacist left, items had dropped to about 15,000 items. So things weren't looking good at this branch. And we went into this branch, and within 2 years, with the same team, that branch grew from 15,000 items to almost 23,000 items within 2 years. And that same branch is doing close to 30,000 items now. Now, when that happened, I started asking myself and my team a question. What has changed? Why is it that with the same team, this branch was underachieving? And after a change of leadership, I think I've let the cat out of the bag. After a change of leadership, the same team was overachieving. And we sat down with the other directors and the management team, and I said, look, we have identified now that leadership in every branch. So in our branches, we don't use managers. We don't need managers. We need leaders. And we came up with this idea that, look, in all of our branches, if we can have the right leadership in place, then all of these things that you've talked about, the culture that we're trying to instill, all of the pillars that has helped us that we want every member of the team to imbibe, it will be easy for them to buy into the culture. So the key for us was leadership. And we have, several trainings. In fact, once a year, every year, we have this leadership training where all the leaders, and for us, leadership is not by title. It is people that demonstrate, because even your dispenser might have leadership traits, that your ACT doesn't have. So it is not a title. It is people that are ready to take on responsibility, people that know that something needs to do it, and they get on with it and do it, and they carry other people along in achieving the goals of the company, which basically is ensuring that our customers are happy. If our customers are happy, then we will also do well as an organization. So leadership is big for us as an organization. And we have identified that having the right leadership in place helps with the team buying into the culture of the organization.
It's interesting you say that. And again, it goes back to the people. And I've said this on previous episodes. Every time I get asked what's the best part of running a business, it's the people. And what's the worst part of running a business? It is also the people, in my own opinion. And I don't know whether or not that's something you agree with from your experience, because you've talked about that leader there that you had in that particular branch person, and under the wrong type of leadership, the branch was going downhill, but then, sort of changing it. And when you have those key people in place, then yes, it can make a difference. And just finally in this section then, in your opinion, do you think growth is a mindset or a strategy?
I would say both.
Okay. How do you mean? Can you explain?
So you can have all the strategies in the world. If you don't have the people with the right mindset to drive that strategy, it's going to fail.
Okay.
So growth is both a mindset and a strategy.
Okay, that's fine. That makes sense. Now, let's flip the coin then, Temi, because I've talked a lot on the podcast and previous episodes about the struggles of pharmacy contractors. And people would see X number of branches and things going. You've mentioned a number of items. I think what a lot of people don't really realize, and if we can sort of shed a bit more light from your own perspective, I have shared my own story on previous episode. It's those dark moments that you would have inevitably gone through as a pharmacy contractor or indeed as a business owner. So what was your darkest moment as an owner, and how did you push through that? Because people would always see the success, but not necessarily the lonely moments, and maybe when you had cash flow problems or people problems or a key staff member left. How did you navigate those moments?
I would say the most challenging, I wouldn't want to use the darkest moment. I would say probably the most challenging season.
Yeah.
And that was when we started. In our first month, it would have been dead on arrival. We were so naive that we budgeted just £5,000 for stock. We ended up spending £50,000 in the first month on stock.
Yeah.
And it was quite challenging because for the first 2 years, we couldn't pay ourselves. Not because we didn't want to pay, but there was no money to pay. So I would say those were the really challenging times, and you will remember, Solomon, I used to call you then to say, you started a few months before us. And, I would call you in those if you call it dark times, those challenging times, to say, where is this money that you guys say is at pharmacy?
The money that was promised.
I'm not seeing any of it. So yes, they were really challenging times, but something kept us going. We were able to see beyond those challenging moments. And my faith, I'm a practicing Christian, and my faith really plays a huge part in my decisions and my perspective on life. I think my faith really helped us to pull through those moments, because there were months that I didn't know where the money to pay the suppliers was going to come from. They were nothing short of a miracle, the fact that we're able to get the money to pay the suppliers. So the beginning part of this journey was what I would call the most challenging times of.
And in that period, what exactly was going through your mind? And did you ever get to a point where you thought, maybe we shouldn't have done this?
Absolutely. I thank God for my brother then. He was working with us then. In fact, I would say that sometimes he was seeing what we were not seeing.
Yeah.
He was one of my our encouragers then, because we would, like I said, it was a 100-hour pharmacy. I would work from 7 a.m. till 11 p.m. at night, 7 days a week. And those low moments, those quiet times, it would just be myself and him. And he would see what I wasn't seeing, because I was more worried about how I was going to pay the supplier.
Invested in it, yeah.
Exactly. And sometimes I would say to him that maybe I shouldn't have bought it. Maybe I should have left my money in the bank and I wouldn't have to worry about, paying suppliers. Yes, we had loads of times like that. But thank God we kept at it, and, we're here where we are today.
I think, again, listening to you then, it's, again, I've said this many times on previous episodes, but with what it seems that we've all got similar stories. And I think because there are those dark moments, like I call it, and, where you think, should I have bothered? And, why did I do this? And it's good, again, I've talked on previous episode about finding the right people to speak to, because in those moments on this journey, you need the right people around you. For you, it was your brother at the time. I'm sure you had one or two other people as well. But I always...
Yeah. We're 4 directors in the organization.
Yeah.
Being able to rub minds with them, sometimes just talking to them, really helped during those times. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you learn anything about yourself as an individual in those moments?
There is something that I grew up in Nigeria before I came into this country, like 20 something years ago now. And my time at the university, in Nigeria, taught me resilience. Oh boy. Yeah. I don't think, this is just child's play when it came to what we went through to qualify as pharmacists in Nigeria. So resilience, in fact, I remember in my yearbook, that was one of the things that I wrote, that going through pharmacy school, at the university I finished from, had taught me resilience. So I think that has really helped us I think that really helped me. And like I said, my faith, I believe that, it was what God wanted us to do, what we wanted to do. And, at during those challenging times, my faith actually really helped us to pull through.
Yeah. And if you were to go through that again, or see somebody that's going through it, so we're going to have people listening to this and they may be going through what you've gone through, or maybe coming in the future, what would you do differently? If knowing what you know now, if you were to go through that again, what would you do differently, or would be your advice?
Seeking counsel. If anybody is going to go into pharmacy business, because it is very important that you seek counsel. Speak to the people that have done it before. They might be able to advise you on the pitfalls that, they fell into and that you can avoid. There was some things that we did at the initial stage that we have learned from. There were big mistakes that we have learned from, and that has really helped us in the future acquisitions that we did. And one of them was signing up to a stupid list. And I've discussed this. We've discussed this several times. That was a really big, and that's the reason why it's very important that anybody coming into, buying a pharmacy and this type of business should seek counsel. It is very important. I'm sure if we had sought counsel at the time, those little prints or those tiny prints that we did not pay attention to, that has had an impact on us, we could have avoided it. So it's very important that people should seek advice. We still seek advice from, people, and it's always a good thing.
And as you may know, I also sort of run a consulting business, doctor consulting, where we help people that want to buy pharmacies or that are running their pharmacies and want to do things differently. And I think you call it counsel. I mean, I've talked about it as well. It's really, really important. And I do agree 100%. I mean, you mentioned the list there. I think the challenge is sometimes when you speak to somebody who wants to offer some sort of consulting and they're telling you they want 2,000, 10,000, 5,000, whatever the fees may be, you can get carried away in the cost of it and thinking that's a lot of money. But I mean, if you were to put value to what you lost or could have lost by that list decision, it would be significantly more than that.
I'll tell you something, Solomon. We don't joke with, when I say counsel, you might call it expert advice.
Yeah.
We had an acquisition recently that getting an expert accountant and an expert solicitor We have a team of experts, accountants, and solicitors that handle our acquisitions now. The money that we spent on those expert advice actually saved us £500,000, because unknown to us, this particular pharmacy had an issue with HMRC, which wasn't as if they did anything dodgy or anything. They got it themselves involved in this tax saving scheme that the HMRC deemed, not right. And they had to pay, the tax that has been due on the money they were trying to save. Anyway, cut long story short, if we had not got the expert advice on that acquisition, we would have inherited a business with a liability of £500,000.
Yeah. And I think, that's anybody listening today, and whether you're new into the industry or the sector, or you want to go into it, I think hearing that from you, I think is massive, because I do agree massively. You can't put price of money on the right advice, because it can save you a lot of hassle. And it's good to hear that you've obviously been through a lot, Temi, and obviously you're clearly doing things. I want to talk about the decisions that shaped your success. So what decisions set you up for long-term success? So you started out with a one branch, started out from scratch, like you said. You've grown the business, and that could be, strategic decisions, staffing decisions, financial decisions. The financial part of it, because what a lot of people struggle with in pharmacy or in business today is that financial element of it. So for the listeners or anybody that's sort of in a difficult position at the minute, how did you manage those things, the financial sides of it, and what decisions set you apart? Did you put any systems in place?
Okay, so I will answer that this way. So for us, when we started out the organization, we had the mindset that we're in this game for the long haul. In fact, I remember a bank manager coming to my house one day and said, Temi, I just want to understand, what is, because I find that you guys are not taking money out of the business. You're not taking money out of the business. What are your plans? What are your goals? I know customers that don't have what you have in your account, and they have a Ferrari parked outside their house. And I remember saying to him then, I think we only had 2 branches then. I said to him, Rob, the guy that started Boots started with 1 branch. I said, that is our goal. We want to grow this organization as much as God would give us the grace to do so. So as much as possible, we reinvest the profit of the business back into the business to grow the business. That is one. Secondly, you did ask something that what were the strategies that we put in place for us to grow into this number of branches that we have now. I remembered when I think we were 4 branches then. And so we have, in the structure of Excel, is that we've got 4 directors. We have a management team that has the HR and the operations manager, as well as a chief operations manager now. But at the time, we have 4 directors. 3 of them are pharmacists, and 1 is a medical doctor. And we had 4 branches at the time, and all of the directors were working neck deep in the business. We were the RP, I would liaise with the bank. We were in charge of HR. And I remember we were getting to a burnout situation. We were almost burning out. We were maxed out. And I realized that if we carried on that way, there was no way we were going to grow.
Yeah.
So we brought in an HR manager that oversaw the operations as well as the human resources of the business. And I remembered, and thank God that we brought this person in. I remembered when the first thing she came in, the first thing she said to me is that we need a structure. I'm like, what do you mean a structure? He said at the organization then there was no structure. She said the structure is very important because people need to know who to go to for what. And looking back now, I can see the importance of putting in place an organizational structure, because people at the time, everybody came to me or my wife or the other directors for stuff, and it was getting overwhelming. We dealt with staff queries, we dealt with staff absences, we dealt with, but putting that structure in place gave us space to think, gave us space to pull ourselves out of the business. And I know there was a time I had that conversation with you as well. And you said, and it was in the same light that you said, Temi, you need to pull yourself out of the business. At the time, I was thinking about the money I was going to pay pharmacists for me to pull myself out. But what I now realize is that doing that means that we can increase our capacity to grow. And if we had not done that at that time, there was no way we would have been able to grow to what we've grown to today. Pulling ourselves out of the business helped us to see clearer, help us to see the business from another perspective. We're still very much involved in managing the business, but not as RP in all of the branches every day of the week, every weekend, and all of that. And that has given us the capacity to breathe and to be able to think about growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, this actually goes back to the people again, because a lot of people would have the vision and the idea to step out of the business. And like you said, something we've discussed previously, I massively encourage it, as you know. It's got to be at the right time. It's got to be with a structure. We've done it without a structure and it has stunk. We have tried to exit a step back from the business without a structure and it has stunk. We've recuperated and gone again. It's much better with a structure. And I think what you described there is, again, the benefit or the value of having the right people in the business. So that one person, again, has come in to do the HR and manage the operations. And the first thing she spotted is you need a structure. And I think that's really important. So I think, again, and I always say this, that you don't always have to be the go-to person. Yes, you're the one with a vision. You started the business as a business owner, but there is a lot of value in knowing that there are people out there that may be better at you at doing certain things or may have a different idea. And as long as those ideas still in line or in tune with the values of the organization, then there is a lot of value in bringing people in to do certain things. Because like you say as well, it wouldn't help you grow. You cannot grow if you're going to be the RP, you're the one signing the prescriptions, you're the one checking. You cannot grow. And I refer to it as saying you need to be working on your business rather than in your business.
Absolutely.
And that's the only way to grow.
Yeah.
You talked about the long haul there, which is very similar to how we started as well. Sort of, it's a long-term game, and I say it's a sprint, not a marathon. So it's a marathon, not a sprint. And pharmacy, you've joked earlier about, where is the money that people are talking about? I talk a lot about the whys, and I think it sounds like when you guys set out, you knew your why. You knew why you were doing what you were doing, and when those difficult moments came, am I right in suggesting that the whys got you through because you weren't in it for the money? If you were in it for the money and you had 2 years where you weren't paying yourself and you had moments at the beginning where you were thinking, what have I done here? You would have probably exited and wouldn't be where you are today. And a follow-up question for me is, when you talk about the long haul, do you believe that knowing what your long game is at the beginning is crucial? Or is it something you figure out as you go along?
Absolutely. You need to define why you're getting into it in the first place. Otherwise, you're going to get discouraged very quickly. And if you don't, have that clear vision of why you want to get into and become a pharmacy owner, pharmacy is not a business to get into because you want to be rich. You'll be very disappointed. You're not going to be poor.
You'll be comfortable.
I remember a GP came to me recently and said that he wanted to invest in the pharmacy. And I said to him, look, you need to be sure of what you're going into, because pharmacy is not a business that you're going to put your money in and you expect a return immediately, or you put your money in and you take your eyes off it. You have to have boots on the ground to run the business. You have to have a clear vision of what you want to achieve, in becoming a pharmacy owner. And there is always this euphoria. I call it the euphoria phase. You just got into your pharmacy and you just bought a new pharmacy and all that. But reality will set in quickly when the bills start coming in, when you start having staffing issues, when the staff calls in sick. I was discussing with a colleague today. There was one of her staff that has called in sick. She's only worked for, I think for 3 months. And out of those 3 months, she's only been at work for 2 weeks. So when you start facing such challenges, you're going to get disappointed very quickly. So you need to be clear in your mind, why you're getting into it. And that should keep you going, hopefully.
No, absolutely. And I think just looking back as well, Temi, is there one decision that you would tell any new owner to make sooner? So was there anything that you found out, you did, a decision you made that maybe perhaps came later and cost you a little bit? Is there one decision that you tell any new owner to make sooner?
Technology.
Okay.
Implementing technology sooner. There is this PMR system that we use that has changed the way we work and has really helped our growth. And also, so this is the way I see pharmacy. The likes of Facebook and all the social media networks and the big boys. One thing they have for them and what they spend a lot of money on is traffic. The reason why Facebook is what is worth, I'm not an expert in all of those things, but I know it's the time that people spend on their platform, that traffic, right? Now, what do they then do with that traffic? They monetize that traffic, isn't it? Now, what pharmacy will do for you is that it will bring traffic. People will come to you to collect their prescription. The question is, what do you then do with that? What services are you offering to those people? What added value, apart from just picking up their prescriptions from you, do you add to those customers? And then if you're able to do that, then you've got a business. Because I wish I had understood this earlier on in answering your question. I know there is a school of thought that would say, no, there is no money in prescriptions. It's all services. That is true to a point. If you don't have the customers, who are you going to offer those services
to?
So it is a win-win situation when you grow your prescription and at the same time, your service offering to those patients also increase. Then you've got a business. Okay. So not just the NHS services, also private services. I wish I understood this earlier, and that would have made maybe would have done a bit better than what we're doing today. But those two things, they are really key. You need to understand that pharmacy is not just dispensing these days. You cannot survive on just the dispensing income. The good thing the dispensing will do for you is that it will give you traffic. It will draw people to your store. People will pick up their prescriptions from you. Okay? They will come to you because they need to pick up their prescriptions. But you need to then add value and glean value out of that traffic, that you're getting. Because the likes of Google, Facebook, and all of that will pay billions to get that traffic. You got it because of the prescription. So what do you then do with it?
I interviewed a guest a few episodes back, and he was saying exactly the same thing. So he was actually coming from the perspective of the locums. He's got a platform where he has a lot of locums on his platforms, and we got talking around, can pharmacies afford to pay locums what they want or what they don't want? And his school of thought on that topic was very much similar to what you're saying, which is we've all got data. We've got patients. Every pharmacist got tens of thousands of patients registered with them. What are we doing with that information and how are we adding value? And I think what you're saying there is very, very correct. And it's about understanding that. And I think that's really, really crucial. Now, I chuckled earlier when he said technology, because I know over the years, you and I have spoken a lot about technology. And to hear you pick technology as the one thing or one of the two things is really, really good to see, because I think we're in an era now where there's no point fighting it. AI is now the new thing, and it's about the sooner I think everybody realizes that they need to embrace technology. And a lot of pharmacy contractors is still pharmacy as a sector, community pharmacy, especially in the UK as a sector, I believe is still massively, massively, massively behind on technology, significantly behind on technology. A lot of pharmacies barely have a website. They might have a website, but what does it do? They've got information page. And even beyond that, we're still very much paper-based in pharmacy. And I do agree with you. I think even for myself, looking back, anyone starting pharmacy today, you've got to embrace technology. You haven't got a choice. When we started, we may have gotten away with it for the first 5, 6, 7 years, maybe 10 years even, where we were still able to do things and still run a successful, profitable business without technology being heavily in. But I do agree with you 100%. I think this may, based on what you're saying, this may not be something that you've considered, but I think every owner, even the ones, who love the business, reaches a moment where selling crosses their mind. Now, that may not be because, and you've mentioned about earlier on how your vision is to grow as much as you can. And selling, or maybe I can use the word exiting, because you may not be selling because you're distressed, because the business is not doing well. Have you ever been at a point that you've ever seriously considered it? So whether it's that the business is not doing well or the business is doing so well and you think maybe now is a good time to cash out, it may be when the contracts have changed and announced and contracts weren't looking as good. Have you ever considered that, seriously considered it?
No.
Okay. And just never crossed mind?
No.
Okay. Why not?
Like I said, it's more like of a legacy thing for us. Starting out, we wanted to build an organization that will outlive us.
Mhm.
So that was clear in our mind from the outset. We were not in need for I don't want to say for the money, because anybody that goes into business, except you're starting a charity, you need to make some pennies. But for us, it's more of a legacy, building an organization that, we can be proud of, that would outlive us. The person that started Boots started with one store. He's no longer here today, but Boots is still here. So that's the kind of mindset we have. So that's the reason why selling has, not
crossed your mind.
crossed our mind. Yeah.
No, that's fine. That's fair enough. And I think, again, over the years, you would have seen a lot of pharmacy contractors come and go.
Mhm.
You would have seen a lot of people that will come to you for counsel and they've started, they want to start. What mistakes do you see new owners make consistently?
I mentioned something about the euphoria state.
Yeah.
This euphoria of my bid has been accepted, or I'm starting a pharmacy, something I've always wanted to do. Going into it without seeking counsel. I keep mentioning that. Is a mistake that new owners make. During this euphoria state or this euphoria season or whatever, there are some pitfalls that you would not see, that somebody that has gone ahead of you would see. So for me, it will be, I've said it before, if you're starting out on this journey, please reach out to people that have gone ahead of you. Just advice on, okay, I'm buying this. What do you think about this? What do you, like, for example, the bad lease I was talking about, something as simple as it being linked to RPI every year multiplies how much you pay on your rent every year, and it keeps increasing like that. There is, just speaking to somebody, I spoke to somebody that was going to buy a pharmacy recently, and I said, please check that lease. Make sure that you negotiate that it is not RPI linked, but that the review should be based on market rate every 5 years. And he pushed for that and he got it. And he came back to say, oh, thank you. I wouldn't have even thought about that. I didn't even have a clue, what the difference between RPI linked, list is, or the one that a market time review. So little things like that, can make a huge difference to your success. So it's very important that you speak to people that have done this and they're still in the game.
Thank you for that, Temi. And I think that's really, really key. And like they say, experience is the best teacher, isn't it? And when we started out, we didn't have, and I think is what you're saying, that people have gone before us. I think when you've got those people around, it's really, really key that you cash in on that.
Uh-huh.
And you get it. You talk about the list there. I think we had a similar scenario. One of our branches that's in a GP surgery, the rent was astronomical, absolutely astronomical. But we were prepared to walk away from that deal the day before we were due to complete if the rent was in the right price that we needed it to be. And it was a big, big, massive thing. And you get all these sort of big landlords come in and they're telling you out there on the FTSE 100 and New York Stock Exchange, and they've been doing this for decades. And I'm like, listen, You can be on any stock exchange you want, but I know what I can afford and what I'm prepared to pay.
Exactly. And what the business can afford.
What the business can afford.
I
Yeah,
don't know
absolutely.
where they get this idea from that pharmacy can pay this stupidly high rate.
Yeah. I think that's probably, I mean, it used to be a case, as you know, the days of the establishment payment or practice payment, where the NHS effectively paid pharmacies to basically pay your rent.
Mhm.
And you got huge lumps of money every year just for being a pharmacy. But I think when that got scrapped is when the market really changed and the game changed totally. But a lot of the landlords, especially the GP surgeries, the kind of conversations I was having in that moment and negotiating that lease, it was just, they were totally out of touch. They've had many, many years and decades of, everybody just paying ridiculous rent. But now that's one of the first things that people talk about. And I think it's that change in the policy around the contract that really just shifted. And I remember saying to them at the time, they're like, yeah, we've got loads of hundreds of buildings that pharmacy rent all over the country. We've never had these conversations. And I remember saying to them, I said, you may not have had it before me. I said, but I can absolutely guarantee you I won't be the last person that's
You
going
won't
to
be
be
the
having
last.
this conversation with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because what everybody's going to do is they're going to wait until the lease runs out, and the next renewal, you'll be having those conversations. Let's move on to policies then, Temi. Obviously, you've been doing this for long enough to see contract changes, funding cuts, and shifting NHS demands. In your opinion, what's the one thing that you think the government still don't understand about pharmacy, about community pharmacy? Something that you wish they'd understand deeply, not just on paper, the white paper or anything. What's that one thing for you, in your opinion?
I wish they understand that pharmacy can bring a lot more value to the NHS. And since COVID, I think the government have started taking notice of the positive impact that pharmacy can have on the NHS and in terms of prevention of disease conditions and a lot more that pharmacies can bring to the table. I'm sure there's been a lot of research that has been done of how pharmacy can actually save the NHS money and how pharmacy has been value for money. I'm cautiously optimistic of what the future is because, like I said, since COVID, before COVID, ministers came on air saying they want X number of pharmacies to close down. I think the number they were branding about was 3,000 pharmacies. They thought the number of community pharmacy
In England, is too many.
was too many. But after COVID, some of the ministers were denying that number, that it wasn't something they recognized because of the value that they are beginning to take notice that pharmacy can bring. And like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic because sometimes it's all policies and nothing happens. The commissioning of more services to pharmacy can actually add value to the NHS. So hopefully they can see that and put their money where, their mouth is and do what they are saying they're going to do in this next phase of the direction of travel of the NHS, where community pharmacy is going to be at the center of it all. So they say we'll have to just wait and see.
What's your view on the reimbursement? So I look at this and do you agree with you? I think the government perhaps don't understand the value that community pharmacies can bring, or I think they understand it, but I think there's just a lot more. I don't think it's as simple as just letting pharmacists do things. I'll give you an example. I'm not sure. I know you've got pharmacies in West Yorkshire. I'm not sure if you've seen the news service about the new the medicines waste reduction service that's been touted about and asking pharmacists to sign up to. Now, in West Yorkshire, we lose about, I think it's £10 million a year in medicines waste. I think it's a year, the data was saying. But they want us to help and basically solve that problem of waste in pharmacies. And I think the way they're proposing that this happens is that we look at patients, we speak to them, and we can make recommendations to the GPs. Now, the fee for that service, they say, is £30 for every one of them you do. But here is where I think it starts getting really, really frustrating for pharmacy. £30, you can have that argument whether that's enough or not to do that. But then you'll get £5 as the pharmacy, right? For every referral you make and every change you make. So you sit down, you speak to the patient, you go through it, then you go on the platform and you fill the form. The request goes off to the GP. You get £5 for doing all of that work. And if the GP approves and agrees with the changes that you've recommended, then you get the other £25. It's things like that that I have an issue with, because that now relies massively on the GPs. And I have had loads of services where we've sort of piloted with the NHS that requires us to work with the GPs, and it's really frustrating, or can be. So I think for me, as long as they've got sort of that equation going that way, where you have to rely on this and you get this part of this here, the reimbursement side of it, and then I think the conceptual service is another one. And I don't know if you've sort of, I'm sure you would have realized this. So the conceptual services, you're aware the price of it has gone up, or the reimbursement fee has gone up. So it's gone up from £18 to £25 for each one that you deliver. However, they have then reduced the amount or increased the amount that you give. So it used to be 3 months, you can give from 3 months, but now you have to give a minimum of 6 months. So what that means is that the value of one patient to you, if you like, for that service, if they came to you every 3 months at £18, you'd get £72 a year from one patient, right? 4 times a year. But now they're saying that it's £25 for each one, but you have to give a minimum of 6 months, which means in a year, the value of one patient is £50. So that's a £22 loss per patient. But the government would not say that. The headline figures would be contraception is now £25. So what's your view on that? And it's the same thing with the pharmacy first and all of these things, but
So,
the reimbursement side of it.
When it comes to reimbursement, we can have conversations on that from now till eternity. We have a body that manages the negotiations on behalf of pharmacists. And the way I see it personally as a contractor is the government will do whatever they want to do. Yes, we can keep pushing. We can keep, at every given opportunity, raising these issues. But personally, when life deals you lemon, you make it a lemonade. Because if I sit down here and waste my energy on what the government is reimbursing and what they're not reimbursing, to be honest with you, the government's finances is not in a great shape. So there is within the context of what the framework where you found yourself, you just have to find a way to thrive. Because I'm not one of the negotiators. If I tell you my view today, the government I don't think it's going to make any difference. So my view on funding is, that is where we're at. Yes, everybody agrees. Do you think the government don't know that pharmacy is underfunded?
Underfunded, yeah.
Of course they know. Why do you think that Lloyd's had to sell up? Why do you think some multiples are having issues? They know that pharmacy is grossly underfunded. I've called you at times when the money that they've paid us is not even enough to pay our suppliers. What do we then do? Do we close shop? Or do we find a way to thrive? So my personal view on it is, yes, pharmacy is grossly underfunded. Yes, there is a lot more that the government can do. Yes, there is a lot value that pharmacy can bring to the table, but where we are at, what do we then do? Okay? We just have to find a way to survive.
And I think, that's all very well said, Temi. When life gives you lemon, you make lemonades.
Yeah.
That's broadly my view as well, in terms of the contract. Like I said, we've got the negotiators, they're negotiating what they're negotiating. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think ultimately, we all agree the government does not have the money. And, pharmacy once upon a time was, really, really well funded, maybe even overfunded, if that's a thing. But I think we are where we're at now, and I do agree with you broadly. However, it is still a topic of conversation, a hot topic. It's the hottest topic for every pharmacy contractor. It's frustrating. You hear stories of people remortgaging their homes and to try and make ends meet and to try because I think the frustration for a lot of contractors is, and you've got these terms of service, for example, you've got the drug over tariff and you're restricted by terms of service that is probably, decades, maybe even a century old and isn't fit for purpose in the current age. And I think that's still a frustration for a lot of contractors. But I do agree with you broadly that, ultimately you've got to control what you can. And like we've discussed already, that's the people coming into your pharmacy. What do you do? How do you offer them? How do you add value to the pool of patients that you've got walking in every day. And I think that's a really good point you make. And now, Temi, just finally, the question that this entire series is built around, and if you can expand on your answer either way, is pharmacy still a good business? And from your viewpoint, if it is, under what conditions? So what needs to happen? How can anyone listening to this who wants to go into pharmacy, you've done it for over a decade, is it still a good business despite everything that's going on, despite all the negative press, the underfunding, you're still growing, so there is a trick to it. So is it still a good business? And if so, what are the conditions that you will put to it in order to thrive in this sector?
Well, for me, this is the only trade I know. I can't be a plumber. It's too late. I can't be a doctor. I don't have interest in that. I'm passionate about what I do. I love what I do. I wake up in the morning, even though I slept late at night, still working. I still wake up, go to work. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy meeting my patients. I enjoy helping them. I get fulfillment from it. So for me, if I look at it from that perspective, yes, this is all I know. This is all I do. This is what I'm passionate about doing. But for anybody that is going into pharmacy for the wrong reasons, then maybe they need to rethink. If you're going into pharmacy because you want to make money and get rich, you will be massively disappointed. Okay. But if you're passionate about patients, if you're passionate about being a pharmacist, if you're passionate about what you do as a pharmacist and the impact you can make on people's lives, we do blood pressure for people, the hypertension case management, finding service where people that didn't have a clue they have blood pressure. I had elderly patients coming to me for COVID and flu vaccines, last week. I did their blood pressure, never taking blood pressure medications all their life. Blood pressure was on the, was very high. Did the ABPM for them, and found out that they are actually hypertensive, referred them to the GP. Those kind of things are fulfilling for me. Okay. So those are the kind of things that I enjoy doing. Those are the reasons why I go to work. I make a few pennies, don't get me wrong. I am very grateful for the opportunity to be involved, in this organization that I'm involved with and owning this chain of pharmacies. I'm very grateful for it, but I am passionate about what I do. I'm still involved in the patient-facing roles because that is what I enjoy. I'm passionate about it. So if you're passionate about that, if you're passionate about business, if it's something you enjoy doing, you've got to enjoy, like any business. You've got to enjoy what you're doing, for you to be successful in it. So if that is you, by all means, join us.
Well, that sounds like a yes. Is that a yes to the question? Then is pharmacy still a good business?
For me, yes, because we're still growing.
And what if? So, and I think that's a valid point, Temi, and I accept that. But I think I'm just looking at it. Then you mentioned about the patients, and this is the thing, isn't it? A lot of pharmacy owners are pharmacists, and I think that's why we wake up every day. We've got passion. We're passionate about our patients, and evidently, and I would agree with you on that. Pharmacy is a business that you put your patients first, and the GPHC code of conduct for us as pharmacists tells us exactly that. So it's not about over any monetary gain or financial gains. Your patients will always come first.
Comes first.
Yeah, absolutely.
My patients comes first.
Absolutely.
And my team that work with me, they know this. They can testify to this. I don't joke with my patients. They come first. I will go the extra mile to make sure that those prescribed medications, we are able to get it for them. Those conditions, those minor ailments they come to us for advice for, we're able to, see to it and make sure they go home happy. So that is what I'm passionate about. If you're passionate like me, then welcome to our club.
Welcome to the club. And if you're starting today with the current state of the sector, so to speak, so if you were about to go into pharmacy today, would you still do it?
I'll do it over and over again.
What does the future look like for you? The future of pharmacy?
Like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic about the direction of travel. It looks like the government is beginning to wake up to notice the value that pharmacy can bring to the table. So I use the word cautiously optimistic because sometimes there are a lot of policies that have been put out in the media and a lot have been said about it, but little or nothing come out of it. But I hope this time, we will experience a real change in the commissioning of more services for community pharmacies to get engaged in.
Fantastic, Temi. That brings us to the end of the questions. But just before we go, I'm just going to run through some very key takeaways, because you have shared some absolute key nuggets in this episode. And I think for anyone listening, I'm sure that they'll all agree with me. But just a few things that stood out for me, and the key takeaways for me include sort of seek counsel, experts' advice, whatever you want to call it. Just don't go in blind. And I think you very much said that and make that very clear. And you also talk about, we spoke about the people and how the people that work in your business can make or break your business, and you've just got to have the right people in the right place at the right time. And we talked about the importance of working on your business rather than in your business, because you talked about how that's how you can grow. From your experience, it would have been, I think your exact words were, you wouldn't have been where you are today if you didn't take that step out of the business. And you also mentioned about thinking about the long haul at the start, at the beginning, and knowing that your vision was to build a business that would outlive you. Must have inevitably impacted a lot of the things that you did and a lot of decisions that you made. And I think, again, it's one of the things that I do speak about a lot. You need to know your why, because once you set your eyes on that goal, it almost doesn't matter what it is. And then just finally, you talked about technology. Implement technology and add value to your patients. And I really like that. I think that's the most standout one to me, if I'm being honest, in that we're sitting on a minefield of patients, minefield of data. And while we're there crying about, what the government funding is doing or is not doing, we are where we're at. Like you say, we've got the lemons with the contracts, and we've just got to stick in there and make lemonades from it. And that's been absolutely brilliant. And thank you so much, Temi. It's been really, really great to have you on.
I think we've got enough nuggets. They should go chew on that.
They should go chew on that. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, Temi. And thank you for listening to today's episode of Behind the Counter. This was part one of our deep dive into long-term pharmacy ownership. Next week, we're speaking to another contractor who has been running the pharmacy for over a decade as well, but with a very different journey to what you've heard today, and a different set of challenges and a different outlook. If you enjoyed today's episodes, please follow, subscribe, and share with somebody who might find it useful. And remember, the best prescription for success is resilience. Thank you for listening.